Okay, so today we are talking to employees about, employee, you say you want a raise. Maybe it's been a while since you've had an employee evaluation. Maybe you've been hired without having clear, concise, well-communicated goals that are in place that you're constantly meeting on and doing, whether it be monthly or quarterly reviews, whatever it might be. Maybe you've taken on a new position or additional duties or things of that nature, a new title, and you're in this space where you're starting to feel resentment creep in, or you're feeling like it's time for a raise. I haven't had a raise in a while. We get phone calls all the time from, honestly, employees and employers alike that are calling us and saying, I know that I don't have an official review and or raise policy in place. How do I handle this? Or maybe it's an employee that says it's been X amount of time since my review or since I've had a raise or anything of that nature, and I really don't know how to handle this conversation. So a few things I'd like to put out here for you. Number one, if you do not have an official, well-declared system in place for doing employee reviews, for lack of a better term, I don't love that term, where you're doing, we'd like to call them growth plans, where you're mapping out your growth, your goals, and things that you want to see for your role, in addition to what your attorney or employer would like to see. If you do not have that in place, and I don't know if we do, means a hard no, you don't. If it's not declared and it's not calendared throughout the year, take initiative and get that in place. If you are an employee listening to this, or if you are an employer, or if you're an employer and you want an employee to step up and lead and take ownership of this, forward this on to them and have them calendar that. My recommendation, our strongest recommendation, has been for the 20 plus years where we see successful teams and employees that stay in their roles, is when they do have a performance plan in place, where they do have a growth plan in place. I recommend no longer than quarterly. If you have a new employee that you're bringing on, then at least every month, where you are sitting down. We have many different sample plans. Just go to our website, download them, send us an email, comment in this YouTube or podcast, however you're listening to this, and let us know, and we'll be glad to share with you what we've used very successfully over the past 20 plus years. So step number one is go ahead and make certain that you have that on calendar for every quarter. If you're a new employee, then it needs to be monthly until you get to at least at 90-day, if not 6-month review time. Number two, take initiative as the employee to facilitate this. So make certain that it's on your calendar. It's also on your manager's, your attorney's calendar, your supervisor, COO, PLA, whatever it might be, their calendar. Also, make sure you have time calendared on your calendar as well as the reviewer's calendar to prep for it. So if you're using our suggested system, we have you as an employee do a self-evaluation where you're having some sacred quiet time and getting very clear on what you've accomplished this year, things that you see in areas of improvement in your role as well as in the firm as a whole, because your opinion and your viewpoint does matter. You have a different seat that you sit in where you see things that maybe the attorney or the entrepreneur does not, in addition to where you'd like to see yourself over the next quarter, the next year, et cetera. This year opportunity. So often we'll hear people tell us, why are you leaving your current job? Many of you know we have a hiring and recruiting side of our business, and they'll, number one answer, hands down, is there's no future opportunity here. And I always have people stop and define for us what their definition of opportunity is. And it's very fascinating to hear the different definitions of opportunity from people. Sometimes it'll come in the form of new titles. Sometimes it'll come in money, and that it's very clear on their path and plan to earn what they want. And when I hear that, either in regards to title or money, which are the number two reasons that we hear from people, the third one that we do hear is that there's just not the culture there. There's not a culture of opportunity and growth. Everyone comes in, they put their head down, they go to work, they live in their own silos, they just muscle through every single day. And we're really not connected to the heartbeat of the business. We're not connected to the goals of the overall goals of the business. So it just feels like I own a job. And if they're a superstar candidate, they really want to own a career. They want to be invested in something, in what we call, they really want to operate like an entrepreneur versus an employee. You'll so often hear us speak about. So when we have people break down this terminology around opportunity and what this definition means for them, and when we break it down in regards to money, it's really fascinating to me when people will say, "Oh, there's no opportunity for growth. We haven't had reviews, we haven't had raises, and I'm really not making the money that I would like to make." And my number one question to them is, "What do you want to make?" And there's usually a silence. "Well, I don't know, but I want to make more than what I'm making now." And when I have them really break down and get very clear on what it is that they want to make, it's not a significant amount from where they're at. And when I paint the possibility and I say, okay, let me just pick a round number and I'll just use a safe number. You're making $30,000 a year right now. And what you're telling me is, now that I kind of coached you through this, and you're saying you'd be delighted with $35,000 a year, right? So let's break this down. Let's take it by paycheck. Let's take it by taxes and everything else. Do you realize that you're leaving for basically pennies? And when you talk about this terminology of opportunity and what you want, it's, by the time you break it down, it's nothing. $5,000 may seem like a lot, but by the time you pay Uncle Sam and you put what you find that you're putting in your pocket, you're really going to make this move for that. Let's talk about if you went from $30,000 to $40,000. Okay, then I got their attention. You can hear their voice speak up, and I will say to them, so as an employer, I have a job. Maybe I have a job I can get you for $10,000 more than you're right now. Very comparable to what you're currently doing. This is what the job description looks like. Here's what I know about the attorney and what I know they really need if they were to have a superstar candidate that comes with batteries included. And this is possible. It's fascinating to me how what they bring to the table when I'm having a conversation that goes beyond their wildest dreams of what they thought they were worth, number one, what they had as their pie in the sky vision of what they wanted to make, etc. It's fascinating to hear that. So I get them inspired, I get them empowered, I get them emboldened about living a bigger future, and they're excited about it. That's during the phone interview. Then we hop on the video interview with them, and we get on there and they say all the right things in this phone interview. They sound amazing. Once I really get them to bring their energy up and to up level what they really want to play into, it's incredible. And then I get on the video interview with them, and I am horrified at how they show up and how they're dressed. Even paying attention to their background that they have on their video, to pay attention to the clutter around them on their kitchen or dining room table or their home office or wherever they're at. Or people, I've even had associate attorneys that are showing up demanding and expecting and wanting, seven-figure high salaries, and they show up and they're showing up doing an interview in their vehicle in a Target parking lot in a hoodie. It's amazing. So if you feel like you're not getting paid what you're worth, you feel like that this esoteric term of opportunity is not available for you where you're sitting right now, I really am encouraging you as an employee to pause and to take stock of what you bring to the table from head to toe. So are you dressing and appearing and showing up like you're worth $30,000 a year? When silently inside of you, you really want $50,000 a year. If you want $50,000 a year and you're currently making $30,000 a year, you better show up like you deserve $50,000 a year. I'm amazed at how many employees will come in with unpressed clothes, unpolished shoes. And yes, you might have a casual work environment. It might not be the traditional three-piece suit and the million-pound marble desks that we have and the grand piano in the entrance room of the traditional old stuffy law firm. But it doesn't matter however anybody else is dressing or what the culture is, up level it. Bring it up a notch. Obviously, not to make everybody uncomfortable, but you can wear a nice skirt, make sure that you have polished shoes, make certain that your car is washed and that it's cleaned inside, make certain that your desk is not looking atrocious every time that the attorney's walking in the hallway between conference rooms. That's what's going to make the difference when it comes time for your review. And if it's something that you're currently not doing and you do take stock after today, and you can communicate that in your review when you come in and say, this is an opportunity that I would like to see, whether it be in a position, whether it be in money, whether it be taking on additional responsibility or up-leveling what you're currently doing. And one of those should be in your personal branding, in your personal appearance. All of us have room for growth. And I would encourage you when you come in time for that review that you actually ask your attorney and you bring that with some additional questions where you're asking them, this is an opportunity for you really to have an honest conversation with me. I'm very interested in staying here long term. I am on a path of growth. I am open and coachable. And one thing I'd like to know is what you're not seeing that you would really like to see in me in these following areas. Because as an employer, a lot of times they're in compromising positions. We'll get phone calls all the time. I don't know how to have a conversation with her about her attire or his attire, that they're showing up in t-shirts or they're not showing up with polished shoes or maybe showing up with wrinkly clothes or not really representing us and showing up with exposed tattoos, whatever it might be, even though it's acceptable to have that and there's no discrimination in that. There's just some things that as employers we really feel. I had an employee one time that had very long eyelashes and she was our client service coordinator and they were so distracting for the clients. I mean, they were obscene. They were absolutely obscene. And I could see it on the client's face when they come in and she would greet them and then sit in the conference room with them. I know it was distracting for me during my team meeting. And it was a hard thing for me to have that conversation. But it got to a point where when during her review, that's one of the things we have on our form is to ask that question. And while she can present it, and I had mentioned it to her while she was a little offended and taken back, I explained the perspective of how it was landing for the clients. And we were able to have an open coaching conversation. So I always tell my kids this too. Don't ask a question you're not prepared and you don't want to hear the answer to. So be prepared when you are asking these questions that you are open and coachable. In your facial expressions, because if you go to a place that's shut down and or crossing your arms or what have you, then it's not going to make for a very successful review. So go in there and communicate that you are open and that you are coachable and that you're very, very vested in everything from the exterior to the interior to your written communication to your verbal communication on the phone. We all have an area of improvement. And this brings me to a point. A lot of times when I facilitate reviews or I speak with clients after reviews, the employees will be a little upset because they always inherently rate themselves as 9s and 10s on everything. I'm going to caution you not to do that. Go into this with there's always an area for improvement. There might be a few things that you are just slam dunking and it is a 10, but for the most part, you want to really always have an area of improvement. Your employer, if you really truly have a safe environment and you have an open and coaching environment, will always rate lower than the employee does. It's very rare. I mean, sometimes they rate higher on a few things, but the collective is that they're usually rating lower than the employee does. And that's because they're coming from a place and not perfectionist, not from unrelenting standards of that nothing's ever good enough. They're coming from that place because they know what's possible for you. They see the grander vision. They see the long-term vision. They know, they see things. I did a podcast a few weeks ago on employee. Your employer believes in you. Why don't you? And if you haven't listened to that, I highly recommend that you go back and listen to that. And I spoke into, they can see the greatness in you, usually more than you can even see in yourself. So they're rating from that, number one. Number two, they're rating from the place of what they know for the grander, bigger, long-term vision, but they're holding back and maybe not sharing it, depending on, you might be a new employee. We might not have all the resources and the infrastructure in place. They don't want to overwhelm you. They don't want to scare you. So they're holding back on some of the bigger mission and vision and what they want long term. So they're rating from that place because they know what's possible and what's yet to come for you. So my recommendation is that when it comes time for that in your questioning, where you say to them, you know, what is your overall goal? What would you ideally like to see in me available for me and in my current role? What are you seeing right now that you're not seeing that you would like to see either stepping into for the first time or up leveling what I'm currently doing? And that's such a powerful question. And again, you need to be open. You need to be coachable for that. It's not a place of, I would really love it, or I would like to see if you could start doing X, Y, and Z more. It's not your opportunity to start to defending why you haven't done it thus far because so-and-so didn't do X, Y, and Z. This is not the platform for that. This is a platform for possibility. This is a platform for opportunity. Employees, those are the words that you tell us. We want more opportunity. I'm leaving here because I want more opportunity. Be very clear on what opportunity means for you and get very specific on that before you even go into the review and what it means. And you might even break it down from a money perspective. And I would really, really, really encourage you and invite you to dream bigger than you think. If you think you're at 30,000 now and you would like to see 35, spend some time with that and break that down and what that means. Most people can't see beyond their next paycheck. Most people live month to month. And so break it down. Don't get seduced by the annual salary. I've seen so many people leave for an additional $5,000. And when you do the math, there's no real grave impact and magnetic impact on you. I had someone that told me that their legal assistant was leaving for a quarter more an hour. I just couldn't even believe it. I'm like, well, where was the enrollment conversation in that? Well, he's like, well, I don't know. I just let her go. No, if they're that great of a superstar, you have an incentive-based compensation plan. So that's the other thing. You might not be able to get what you want in a salary, and you might know that based on the dynamics of your firm or what have you, but you can. There's other creative ways to unpack that. So I always say go in with proposed solutions versus just suggestions and demands and problems. And break it down and say, ideally, I would really love it if I went from 30 to 50. Okay, what would this look like overall on a quarterly basis? What are the top 3 projects or the top 3 improvements that I can make or the top 1 or 2 additional things that I could take on? You'll have suggestions. And then when you go into your review, your employer or supervisor will have additional suggestions. This is the opportunity for you to have a creative, innovative adult conversation. It's not that you have to have everything absolutely solved when you go in there, but you do have to have clarity on what you want. From a money perspective, don't put that on your employer. Be really clear and be really honest with yourself. Don't tiptoe around it. This is your one shot and your one opportunity, and you're communicating that you're very clear on what you want in addition to what you can do in the firm as well to bring that value, to contribute to the client experience, to impacting the calendar, the process, and cash flow, or whatever that might be in your role. So get really clear on that. And there's people have all this anxiety around money, which I don't understand, because the anxiety comes in the lack of clarity when you're going back and forth and you're wishy-washy on that. And then you go back to your desk or go back to your husband or get your first paycheck after your raise. And you're like, what the heck is this? Do your math, do your homework, spend some time with it, and spend some time visioning ultimately what it is that you want. And then you can unpack from there on what it would take to get you there, whether it be in base salary, base plus bonus, and or incentive comp, and then getting really clear on what you want in regards to your role. When you show up like this with a tremendous amount of clarity and certainty, and maybe you don't have the confidence yet, but if you have clarity and certainty and the courage to have the conversation in the first place, I promise you, the more you practice that, that's the way, that's the path, that's the formula for the confidence, and the confidence will come, especially when you get the feedback from your attorney where they really are grateful that you had the courage to bring this conversation and that you had the wherewithal to power down and really put some time and energy and effort into your review, into your goal planning and your growth planning, and taking that pressure, because it communicates to them that you have their back, that you are invested in not only what's in it for you and getting a raise, which is typically how that conversation lands, but it really communicates that you have some level of investment in the overall goal, which is impacting the clients, of course, impacting the process internally, supporting and saving the attorney from administrative things or wherever they're bottlenecked. And you all know that, whatever, regardless of whatever seat or position you sit in the firm. So it's an adult conversation. And interacting with it like that versus all this bunged up emotion and anxiety around it, it really should be an exciting conversation. When people do it right, and there's a little bit of fire in the belly and a little bit of fear in the throat, that's when you know. That's when you know you're on at a tipping point for transformation and for up leveling your compensation, your role, your communication. There's so much that comes out of it once you have that courage. So, employees, if you're in a position where you haven't had a raise, you haven't had a review, but you're starting to feel it's time, whether resentments creeping in, frustrations creeping in. So often I'll have people say to me, I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so overwhelmed. We're so overworked. And when I really break it down, have them track their time and do some of the exercises that we facilitate, it's amazing to me, because it's not necessarily overwhelm, it's upset. And when I really, really like peel away the layers of that onion, it's upset because they haven't had the proper time and attention. They haven't had the proper reviews. There's no structure. There's no North Star, nothing that they're playing into. And they don't know when the conversation's ever going to happen because everyone's so busy. Take responsibility. You have permission. You have authority. If you are here listening to me, your attorney sent this to you, or you found your way to me somehow, I guarantee you that you have the permission. People don't just randomly trip on our messaging and what we have to say and what we stand for law firms across the country. It's typically because you're in the environment that we speak into and that we live into, which is an environment of empowerment, which is an environment of coaching conversations, and which is an environment of opportunity, possibility, and growth. So if you're hearing this, that's the world that you either currently live in full blown, or that your attorney and or yourself are deeply curious about and want for your firm. And so go into it with that adult conversation mindset. Be very clear on what opportunity means for you. That's step number one. From a money perspective, from a role perspective, and maybe even just visioning from a year from now perspective. Just take it and start there. Number two is what do you want to have ideally? So if you think it's X, up level it. If you think it's 30,000 right now, and I really would love to go to $1 an hour or more if you're on hourly, or I'd like to go to $2,000 and more a year, make sure you take stock of, your health care, your daycare going up, your vacations, your health insurance, your 16-year-old going on your insurance now, whatever it might be, having to purchase a car, maybe you want to start saving. Go at it from that place, and maybe you even enroll your attorney into what you're planning for yourself from a goal setting perspective, personally and professionally. So often I will hear from attorneys, I want my team to start goal setting. They'll call me and say, can you facilitate a goal setting workshop for us? Do it on Zoom, what have you. And it's important to me that they are planning personally and professionally, because I don't ever want, it's important to me. We have a family culture, and I don't ever want them to ever have to leave here, especially if they're a rock star, superstar employee, because they weren't able to either support their family financially and or what they have in regards to family commitments, et cetera, that they're missing it. And that's what happens quite often is people leave because they didn't have those upfront, critical, crucial conversations in the first place. So the last thing I will say, as an employee, I'm putting this on you. Take responsibility for your reviews. If you don't have a formal structure, go to your attorney, bring it to your team meetings, whatever's the right forum for you to bring this conversation to say, I would love for us to start having this. Guys, it's time for us to be on an intentional path, a growth plan, a path and plan to grow. So this is something I would like to see. And what do you all think? Can we bring it? Bring the idea to your team meetings or the appropriate forums. Most firms that we work with don't have an official HR department, but if you do have a CEO, COO, et cetera, bring it to them. If they say to you, let me get back to you, take responsibility for the follow-up. I always tell people, I can't care more about your future than you do. So they might have 47 things on their plate, on their desk, and they're not able to get to it. It doesn't mean they're blowing you off. It doesn't mean they don't care. Don't give it any story a meeting that's unnecessary. Just show up like an adult and take responsibility for it and follow up on it until you get an official answer. Then I would also say to you, and this is something I would say too that I've seen before, and I'm just going to put this not from a place of fear. If you have a higher level professional law firm administrator, CEO, COO, et cetera, and you're bringing it to them and you know your attorney to the core, you were there in the beginning, you know who they are, you know how when you interact with them, and you know that they're in a coaching environment, that they're on a path of growth, they belong to some of these very wonderful organizations that instill that, and you're getting a no, I would recommend that you have a joint meeting with the attorney and say, I know this is something that's important to them, and I really would like to just discuss it with them as well. Can we do that? And I can help enroll them in that. Don't give up on it. Because so often I will hear from people that they leave, and then the attorney will call me and say, Susie just left. And I'm like, well, they've been trying to get reviews in place. They've been bringing it to the CEO or to the PLA or what have you. And they're like, this is the first time I'm ever hearing of this. So sometimes, and I'm not saying that there's any ill will or there's manipulation on the higher level management team at all, but sometimes they maybe didn't have the right language to present it. Maybe they presented it at the wrong time. Maybe they felt like they presented it and they just didn't have the proper coaching language to present it. So don't give up on it. Don't give up on your future if it's something that's important to you. So I would definitely say put it on you. If you are just a new hire or you're a smaller firm that does not have that, so often I will hear from the attorneys that they believe, and again, clarify and verify that they put it on the employee to put it on the calendar. So again, You take ownership of this and go to your attorneys, go to your managers, go to your PLAs, COOs, whatever it might be, and bring this up if it's something that's important to you and it's not in place. But again, make sure you do your work. You can contact us, say, bring the form, bring the process, the evaluation and the growth plan process. Make sure you show up fully, wholly prepared, and you're scheduling time for the attorney to get prepared in preparation to make for a very successful review. Let us know how you do with this, and we look forward to your feedback and comments. And again, if you need any help with downloading the forms, just reach out to us. Good luck.